In this programme, we're going to meet with three people who want to be your Vice President of Communications. They'll be in editing, Cub, QMessenger, QMTV and Quest, as well as being responsible for the overall communications of the Union. They're all members of the Q Media family. They hold editorial positions and they ultimately want the top job in the next academic year. Now, I'm a journalist interviewing three journalists, so this is going to be very interesting television. I'm going to ask them all the same questions, but will they give me the same answers? We'll find out. It's survive or die as we meet the candidates. So welcome first of all, Sam, and how are you feeling at this early stage in the campaign?
Good, thank you. Stressful as always, but I'm enjoying myself. It's good fun. I like it.
Okay, now talk me through your manifesto.
Well, my manifesto, I want to make our media sort of more accessible, more relevant, and something we can all be proud of. I'll do this by making QMessenger weekly, by transforming Cub into a fortnightly released pull-out magazine from the newspaper, by increasing distribution, that includes Charterhouse Square and having a place in Library Square itself. I want to give student media back to the students by introducing student editors for each position, by establishing the Q Media community. Basically, that's a group of students, the editors as well as some elected students as well, and they will be tasked with making sure the media remains representative and student-led. I'm basically just wanting to let the students take more of the reins and sort of using my role and my experience as sort of facilitator, making sure they can sort of reach their full potential. I want to turn Q Media into a training ground for tomorrow's journalists, liaising with the Careers Department, which I've been doing already, and also with the NUJ, the National Union of Journalists, to make sure these training opportunities are available to everyone who wants them. I want to make the SU more representative, more accountable, and more sort of reflective of what students want. So, I know, I've got a lot of things. I mean, my full manifesto can be found on my Facebook group, We Elect Sam Crichton. That's just a taste of a few points.
Okay, now what qualifies you specifically for the role, media-specific experience for this role?
Well, I mean, I've actually had quite a long career in the QM media. In my first year, I was news editor of Cub. In my second year, I was the founding news editor of QMessenger, and I was news editor on that in my second and third year. In my third year, I founded QMTV, and then was elected as VP Communications, and in the last year as VPCOMMS, I founded the Q Media website. I've got QMTV off the ground in a real way. I've managed to get Quest Radio off the ground, which has been floundering for about for 5 years almost, and really got our media noticed by national and international media organisations.
Okay, now when you say floundering, Quest floundering, are you able to clarify that?
Well, I mean, Quest before, I mean, there's very committed people in it, and it managed to get some resources right at the end. There's no real structure in it. I mean, as much as people were trying, I'm not saying they weren't, but it never started broadcasting. By the time they got everything ready, everyone who was involved graduated and there was no one left behind. So the SU, and myself, sort of took it in, and we managed to do up the studio, which got into a state of disrepair, which obviously was a bit of a delay. Got a whole new team of really motivated, committed, and people who are experienced in radio already, and we're about to start broadcasting very, very soon.
Okay. Q Media has myriad outlets: Cub, QMessenger, QMTV, Quest, and the website. Do we utilise all of these satisfactorily enough? And how do you intend to continue developing these media?
That's an interesting question. I mean, firstly, yes, I'm actually very proud of everything we put out. However, I do think that this year's been a year of transition. I mean, it's QMTV's first real year. It's QMessenger has been completely redesigned and expanded from 16 to 24, that's 8 extra pages per issue. And Quest, like I say, has just been sort of set up properly this year, sort of in a really workable way. So, while I am proud of everything they've done, there is of course room for improvement. I think the manifesto shows I've got the ideas and the experience really to sort of push these forward by making them more student-led with the student editors, by making them more accountable with the Q Media community, by making them more relevant, by making QMessenger weekly and Cub fortnightly, and now with Quest and QMTV, what we've been doing this year is setting up, having a structure, having a framework, and really sort of getting people trained up, which now we're doing very, very well, and it's coming along very satisfactorily, and I'll carry on into the next year.
Sure. Now, to touch on a point we were talking about earlier regarding student media being student-led, and you wanted to create more, I think you said student editors.
Student editors, exactly.
I mean, my question was going to be, is student media student-led as it is, and how do you plan to keep changing that?
It is student-led, and so I don't actually want to change it. So it is student-led at the moment. However, I mean, it's always going to be more student-led. It's actually students doing as much as possible. I want students to not only be having been editors of different sections, but having a student who's editor of the publication as a whole. What my role would be as VPCOMMS wouldn't be to edit it, but would be there to facilitate what they want to do, using my experience and the resources of the union and everything to really help them and the publication reach its full potential.
So what that means effectively, am I right, is that, say, for example, Q Messenger would have an editor that would have ultimate control over what went in there, and it would just simply go to you to help.
Well, it would still be libel checked, obviously, to make sure everything was legal, and it would be fact checked like it is now to make sure everything was correct.
Right.
But yes,
okay.
Basically.
Now, of the different media that we have in the family, if you like, what would be prioritised by you, or would you treat them all equally?
Well, I have to say I'm in almost a unique position to treat them equally. I've been involved in every single one at one point or another. News editor of Cub, founder of Q Messenger, founder of QMTV, founder of the website. I've been in charge of Quest this year, so I've actually been fully involved in every single one. So I wouldn't favour one or another, if you know what I mean.
Okay, they'd all get equal treatment.
They'd all get equal treatment, exactly.
All the manifestos for the three candidates in this category have a recurring theme in them of sort of student leadership, expanding opportunities for students to get involved. How do you plan to increase participation across the board?
Well, see, I think what some of the other candidates have said, I mean, in previous years as well, and it's what I said last year as well, because is to have sort of much more organised meetings. I did start that this year, and we had quite a few at the beginning of the year. They didn't really work as well as we hoped they would. What I think will, and speaking to some students, and they come back very positively with this, is that what we should have is drop-in sessions, where it's not a fixed meeting with a start and a finish and an agenda. What I'd have is maybe an hour a day where myself and the editor would sit at the front, maybe after working hours, and we'd have to work out the times, but where the students could just come in for as long or as little as they want. They could come for 5 minutes, they could come for an hour, and just say what they wanted to do, how they wanted to do it, what sort of support they wanted, and everything like that. As well, I want to increase the training opportunities that we provide. We've already had more this year than before, with sort of greater feedback being given, but I want to increase that further. And I think if you actually say, get involved, and you will get these opportunities or this feedback, then people are more likely to sort of get involved. I think a lot of people are quite intimidated by student media because they think they're not good enough, and that's not actually the case.
Okay.
Everyone is good enough. Everyone has the ability to sort of write well or present well or produce well. They just need the opportunity and the training to allow them to do so.
Okay. Now, compared to many other unions, the Q Media budget is pretty modest.
Yes, it is.
Do you feel that it can be utilised differently to the way it is at the moment, and if so, how? In other words, how will you split the budget next year?
I would put the budget, I mean, again, I think having looked at it this year, I mean, unfortunately this year, QMTV wasn't in the budget because it was set up before I sort of came into my role. Again, Quest wasn't in the budget because it only came under the union in October, well after the budgets were finalised. So these were two things that I actually funded either through myself with personal contribution or by getting bids from the college or basically getting money from anywhere I could. What would happen next year is these things would be actually put in and formalised in the SU budgets. I've been actually done really well getting funding this year. I've raised thousands of pounds so far in bids from the college. I've got several more into the college which are looking very promising, and hopefully they'll come back positively as well to help me, or allow me to help the media by providing more facilities.
You said that QMTV wasn't in the budget, because it was founded before you got the role. So how come it couldn't have been put into the budget?
Well, I mean, it was a weird thing because obviously it was my predecessor who was doing the budget, and he didn't really know what QMTV needed, what it wanted. The way he saw it, there was already a general equipment thing there of I think it was just a couple of £100, and he thought, well, there's an equipment thing there. The equipment can be used by QMTV. What he didn't realise is obviously QMTV needed quite a lot of equipment, needed quite a lot of things to really sort of establish itself rather than be a sort of passing phase.
Right.
But that will be rectified in next year's budgets.
The clock is ticking, so I want to get through these last few questions. Quest is the newest media outlet this year. How are you going to develop that next year?
Well, I mean, what I've managed to do this year is have a successful bid into the college. Well, I've just actually just came back successfully. I've got a Mac, 2 Mac Minis, 2 iPod Touches. We've got a new, very capable station manager, well, 2 actually, who are doing very, very well. We've got a team of
students.
Students, yes. We've got teams of students who are working very, very hard. We've got fantastic interviews lined up as well. I mean, we've actually got one student interviewing The View this afternoon to be on the radio, and we're launching in April. So I'll just basically carry on pushing, as I have been all year, to get Quest up and running in a meaningful way for the first time.
I've got to ask all candidates about this for obvious reasons. Higher education and finances is a big issue, and it will be next year.
Yeah, of course.
What's your stance? I'm going to guess, but please tell me. Is your stance the same as the current free education policy of the union?
I think that free education should be about social mobility, and it says this in the Q Messenger questions that we were given. It should be about social mobility, and therefore it should be accessible to everyone. Okay. And the only way to make sure of that is to provide education for free. And there are different ways. I mean, you think when the Student Council voted through this policy, lots of different ways are talked about on how free education could be provided. And it doesn't have to be in a way that puts significant, or even necessarily any burden on the individual taxpayer, on the actual general person on the street. And I think it's a failure of this government and the last for not looking into those properly.
Okay, two very final quick questions, so if you can keep your answers fairly brief. The making presumption you do watch and read all of Q Media.
Of course.
One would think. What areas do you think are working effectively? What areas could do with amending?
Well, I think Q Messenger now is actually working better than it ever has before, especially with this last issue that's just come out. I think that's working very, very well. I mean, news section is brilliant, and again, sports section, while it was faltering at the beginning of the year, has really come into its own now, is doing very, very well. And I think QMTV, especially with news, with the coverage of the student protests, has been very, very good. What can we do with amending? Well, I think there's always room for improvement in anything. I mean, I'm very proud of everything we've done, but there's nothing which is perfect, nothing will ever be perfect. Things can always get better. And what I think is continuity and experience of actually knowing how things have progressed over the last 4 years now is what the media really needs to help it move forward progressively.
Okay, finally, in this job you have to wear two hats. You have to be an editor and a student selection officer. Can you successfully wear both? And if not, is there a way of mitigating in any way the danger of conflicts of interest?
Well, there is a way of mitigating it, and that's what I'll put in my manifesto with student editors. If you give student media back to the students, allow them to lead on the media, then I think that is really the best way to remove the conflict of interest that exists. And I mean, again, there's lots of other things in the manifesto which will mitigate sort of that kind of concerns. It's something that I've known about personally, obviously this year, that I talked about with the last VPCOMMS, Sam Cunningham the year before, and the year before that, and even with Claire Rutter in my first year when she was VPCOMMS. It's something we'd all talked about, we all knew about, and so I knew about it when I was coming into the role, and I've really experienced it this year. So it is a problem, but I've certainly got ideas on how to rectify it.
Brilliant. Sam Crichton, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Lawrence Chacksfield, who is referring to himself as Chackers in this campaign, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, so Chackers, welcome, how are you?
I'm alright, thank you, I'm good.
Talk me through your manifesto.
My manifesto basically is one for change. I think a major thing that I'm looking at to provide for the students is quality over quantity. I think that actually what we need to be looking at is actually how to improve the student media and not necessarily sort of go to make it a sort of a weekly thing. If you go for Quest Radio, it will be sort of actually getting it off the ground. QMTV, sort of making sure that we have sort of better equipment so actually we can do sort of the things we want to do with that.
Okay, now what qualifies you specifically for this role based on your media-specific experience?
My media-specific experience, I've been an editor of Q Messenger for a year, which has been sort of good, and that sort of allowed me to sort of learn sort of more or less all about sort of the media there. And also in my time at university, I've been a communications officer for both a club and also a charity. So I've actually got to see how communications work from a society level and from a students' union level.
Okay, now Q Media, as you've alluded to, has myriad outlets: Cub, Q Messenger, QMTV, and Quest, as well as of course the website, all under your remit if you win. Do we utilise these satisfactorily enough, and how do you intend to develop all of these media?
When you say do we utilise these all enough, you mean like specifics or just...
Do we make enough of them? I mean, are we using them in the right way, would you say?
I don't think so. That's what I would disagree. I think with Quest, I think the fact that we have spent tens of thousands of pounds on this radio station, I understand there have been problems, but the fact that yet we have yet to see a single radio show is definitely a problem. I think also with QMTV, there have been some amazing people working within it, and it's got off the ground to a good start. However, I think we need to see like a lot more regular coverage, so it's something that people do tune into. I think also, just quickly touching back, a lot of people do find themselves disillusioned with the Students' Union, and actually by utilising the media, not just in global emails and how the Students' Union is doing, but in regular sabbatical video blogs, etc. We can utilise it a lot better.
Do you believe that our student media is truly student-led? And if it isn't, how would you change that?
I believe to a certain amount it is student-led. At the end of the day, we do have sort of student editors, and it is sort of built up by students. However, at the same time, there is a problem where we have to ask ourselves sort of, why have so many people resigned from Q Media this year? And actually, it does seem that sort of whatever the leadership may be, actually, it seems that there is a problem and something might not be working quite so well.
Is there any way you'd like to clarify on that?
Well, what I mean is that, like, yes, actually, there are parts of it that's student-led. Like, students do make the student media, but if so many people are resigning, it actually sort of shifts it more into the sabbatical office, and actually we sort of need to be seeing sort of why are people leaving, and actually how can we bring in the right people for the right jobs.
Okay, now what of the different media that we have would be prioritised by you, or actually would you treat them all equally?
I think they all need to be treated equally. I think actually in the past what we've seen is that some publications have taken precedence over others. For example, Cub, I'm told, has about 4 times the funding that Q Messenger does. I think that actually sort of, as an outlet, that's gross sort of prioritisation. I think actually that we have like many arms of Q Media. Some of them are left behind. I think actually my battle for this next year, if elected, is trying to get them all onto a decent par with the rest of London.
So just to clarify that figure, saying the Cub you think has 4 times the amount spent than on Q Messenger, did you say? Are you able to elaborate on that?
What I was told is that actually the annual budget for the year for Q Messenger was £4,000 and for Cub was £16,000.
Okay, I mean, I only raise that because I've tried in researching for this interview to find the figures for it, and I haven't had the breakdown in the annual figures. I was just curious for the source. But moving on to a different point regarding manifestos again, and a recurring thing that I noticed in all 3 of the manifestos for the candidates here is the issue of student leadership and expanding the opportunities for students to actually get involved. How do you plan specifically to increase participation?
I think what we need to sort of get to is actually to make sure that every candidate who's coming for a job in Q Media needs to be interviewed, so we are getting the right people for the right job. And also we need to actually make sure that these people are trained well. That's why I can actually now confirm that if elected, I have actually got the editor of the Wall Street Journal and the Times Online who is going to come and train our journalists to make sure that we have decent student-led journalism here in Queen Mary that will make us the envy of London.
And that's official?
That is official, yes.
Okay. Now, compared to many other unions, the Q Media budget is pretty modest. Do you feel that it can be utilised differently to present? And if so, how? How do you split your budget next year?
I think, as I was sort of just going back to sort of spending on, say, like Cub, for example, maybe we need to sort of like look at that and maybe make that a supplement in the newspaper. Maybe we need to look at how much like the advertising is. However, as you said yourself, Craig, like it's very difficult to see the numbers, and without the numbers, I can't make a definite call on that.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, I can't.
Well, that's fair enough. Now, you mentioned Quest as being, it is the newest media outlet under the umbrella this year. So all 3 of you, if one of you was to be elected, would get free rein to basically almost launch the station from scratch, as it were. How do you envisage the station developing?
Well, I think actually, like what we need to do is actually at the start of the year make sure we have a lot of students know what it is, know where to find it, and then we need to work on our material, like maybe having live music venues in our sort of venues here on campus, and then broadcasting them. Also, if we do have sort of student reports, that they are actually broadcasting in ground, in Drapers, sort of just during the day so people can listen to them.
Okay.
Also, just going back to representation from the Students' Union, you can maybe have a Student Union podcast, and we could even podcast that and put that online in a whole host of media so sort of people know where to reach that.
Now, making the presumption that you do read and watch all areas of Q Media, what areas do you think work most effectively, and what could do with a bit of amendment?
What areas work most effectively? I would say what works quite effectively is QMTV. QMTV, I would say, has just had so much improvements, and it is working well. It has some brilliant sort of people there editing and working hard. On the same time, though, that does come at a shortfall. It does need sort of better quality of equipment, so we can send our journalists out there into the field to be actually bringing like good media back. What could we be doing with some amendments? I would say Cub. What we need to do with Cub is we need to actually sort of deal with the design of it. Students tell me that it's unreadable, and there are things where it is unreadable and the quality is not high enough, or sort of words go in, they're really small. I think actually we need to deal with that, and if people can read it, people can see what a great publication is and what our students are putting into that, and our readership will increase.
Okay. Got to press you on an issue I'm asking every single candidate in this election, that is higher education finances. As a
Absolutely, I'd be disappointed if you didn't ask it, really.
You'd have to be responsible for it. So what's your stance on it, and are you in agreement with the current SU position of free education?
Yeah, I think in an ideal world we do need to be lobbying for free education. I think if I take office, that's where my stance is.
Okay. I've got a quick question on the fact that this job requires wearing two hats in effect, that of an editor and that of being a student sabbatical officer. Can you successfully wear both hats, and is there any way of mitigating the danger of conflicts of interest?
I think I can wear both hats because I actually have been wearing both hats for a while. I am both an editor of the paper and also a student counsel. I think so from those points I can actually see from the ground up how the two intertwine. As with conflicts of interest, like I think if elected as sabbatical, I would always declare those, I'd always make sure it was done fairly, and I think, you know, there's nothing possibly can go wrong. Well, it can, but I'm always going to deal with it fairly and in the most just way.
Okay. Lawrence Chatsfield, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Craig.
Sahar, welcome. How are you feeling?
Hiya, feeling great.
Okay.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Now, talk me through your manifesto.
My main point is that I want to start including students in the actual process, because I feel for a long time the union has been focused on only as like an entity of politics, rather than recognising all the cultural, religious affiliations that students have, the diverse kind of identities. I want to bring that back into the fold.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what qualifies you specifically for the role based on your media-specific experience?
Okay, well this year I've been co-technology editor for CUB, so that's given me great grounding in Q Media.
Okay.
And over the past 2 years I've also written for the London Student, written for some blogs, and I've always been interested in journalism. I always wanted to go into journalism, so it's my career aim.
Okay. Now, Q Media has myriad outlets. You mentioned CUB, Q Messenger, QMTV, which you're on, Q Quest, and obviously the website. Do we utilise all these satisfactorily enough? And how do you intend to develop all these media?
Well, I don't feel that QMTV has just been set up this year, and it has been great. You know, they've gotten some things on Sky News and stuff, so that's great. But it's not being utilised to its maximum. I think the editorial team broke down quite soon, so it's important to keep up a dedication and momentum, and that has to come from top. And also the news website hasn't been advertised well enough, I feel, so I work on just raising awareness and promoting it around campus.
Sure, okay. Now, this links into something that's you're talking about quite a lot really, student media being student-led.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that it's not student-led enough, and how are you trying to change this?
No, I don't think it is particularly student-led. I think that it's the articles which are written are more representative of those who write them, rather than what students are actually interested in. I think the best way to reach out to the student body as a whole is probably through societies, because they're representing so many different ethnicities, so many different people we may not be aware of, different sports groups. So I think by creating a strong collaboration with them, that's the best way, getting news, ideas and stories from society leaders.
Okay, what of the different media that we run under the umbrella, that would come under your remit, would be prioritised by you? And would you just treat them all equally?
Which media outlets you're saying?
Yeah.
I'd probably focus more on the CUB magazine and Q Messenger, purely just for the reason that that's the things that people will immediately be able to pick up. You get that in Ground Cafe, you'll get that everywhere on campus. But I do think students are always saying on the internet nowadays, so that is also a big focus that we do need to start turning our focus to that as well. But mainly CUB magazine and Q Messenger.
So just to clarify, you're going to prioritise CUB and Messenger. Does that mean really, in real terms, QMTV and Quest are neglected or deprioritised?
No, not neglected, just that once you create a dedicated team, because most of the legwork is just establishing communication, once you've done that, I think that they can really take off, but our focus should be probably more towards CUB and Q Messenger, because you can advertise QMTV and the online news services through that, so they are really important counterparts.
Sure, okay. Now, all the manifestos that I've read of the three of you have this very recurring theme of student leadership, expanding the opportunities for students to get involved, to lead. How do you plan to increase participation?
Through societies mainly, as I said, and student polls, because we can get the opinions of what's actually going on and use that in our news stories, which I think would be great. And also just keeping track to expand our topics to religious and mixed culture nights alongside sports, politics and higher education clubs. So it's just being, as leader, being aware that there are so many different interests and making sure that they are catered for.
Now, compared to many other unions, the Q Media budget is pretty modest. Do you feel that it can be utilised differently to how it is at the moment? And if so, how? How would you split the budget that you're given?
Okay. Well, right now I think that they decreased the number of publications because of budget problems, and also changed the colouring and things like that. I think maybe finding different printing services might be of use, and also, as I said, if you do turn to the online outlets, you can focus less on using up like paper waste and things like that, so you can do that. And also promotional activities is a great idea, collaborating with like venues and societies. If they want to promote events, we can gain funding from that, so we can get involved.
Now, Quest is the newest media outlet under the media umbrella that you would be responsible for, and all three of you as candidates in essence get to start a media station, a radio station from scratch, because it has not yet broadcast anything. How would you develop it if you won?
Well, first off, I think there's probably a lot of interest in Quest Radio. I believe that when it was Freshers Week, that was what was most signed up for. Unfortunately, it didn't start up. So getting people who are really interested in it, getting different societies involved. They can have like an Asian, kind of portion, or sports radio, things like that. If you get a wide portion of people with their specific interests, then it'll kind of go from there. It'll spiral out.
Okay, now I'm making the presumption, as I have with all of you as candidates, that you read, you watch all areas of Q Media. Yeah. What areas do you think work most effectively, and what could do with a little bit of amending, a little bit of improving?
I'd say Q Messenger has worked quite well. I think people are quite interested in that, but it's probably too focused on politics. So a lot of people do feel isolated from the concerns that they're talking about.
Is there student politics or national politics?
Student politics mainly.
Okay.
I mean, I know we should all be interested in it, but the fact of the matter is some people aren't. And Queen Mary has typically been seen as apathetic. So I think that whilst we should be raising the awareness of it, don't just ignore the student reality here.
Sure. Okay. I mean, that's what you would probably amend. I mean, are there any things that you say Q Messenger works effectively? Are there things you think don't work so well?
Right now, I'd say the news website. I don't think many people are aware of it. As I said, QMTV. It has dwindled in kind of postings of videos. Obviously, the election is going to bring that back up. But yeah, I think those are probably the two main parts.
Okay. Now, I'm asking all candidates in every category this next question, and it's regarding higher education finances, which have dominated the landscape of student politics this academic year, and it is only going to continue really into the next as well, if we think about it. So, therefore, what stance are you taking as a candidate on this with regards to representing students at QM? Do you carry on the SU free education policy?
Yeah, definitely. And that should be part of our campaign, really. So our responsibility is to reflect what the union believes, so that's exactly what I do.
And the union has the right position?
Yeah, I believe they do.
Okay.
They may ultimately have to compromise at some point, but I guess just stick to principle. So.
Now this job requires wearing two hats at the same time, that of an editor and of a student sabbatical officer. Can you successfully wear both hats? And is there a way of mitigating the danger of any conflicts of interest?
I think you can, but it's a definite balancing act. Right now, the newspaper is probably too much set towards the mind of a sabbatical officer. So it's too political, it's not noticing what students are really thinking about. So as I said, I think it's about, as long as you've got enough student backing, if you've involved enough students, you will automatically be balancing it because you'll be looking at the concerns of everyone. That's probably the best way.
Brilliant. All right. Sahara Azul, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.